Everyone ignored the two falling boys, everyone except the black waitress who, without knowing their father's wealth, hauled them back from the void. The Asteria's rooftop terrace floated above the city like a white ship, 64 floors up the horizon stretched under a hard blue sky. Tables were dressed in linen, guests lifted glasses, and no one paid the rail any mind, except two little boys, identical and white, no older than 5, dressed alike in teal vests, crisp white shirts, navy shorts, white socks and black shoes. They chased a napkin a gust had stolen, laughing as it skittered toward the edge. Their father, mid-conversation, waved a glass, the nanny stared at her phone. Everyone assumed somebody else was watching. Nia Campbell was watching. She worked in a bright red uniform with a white apron and headpiece, yellow cleaning gloves pulled up to her elbows after she'd polished the rail. She wasn't new, she carried a tub and her eyes flicked across the terrace out of habit, not panic, until the wind caught the napkin and lifted it over the rail. The boys reached for it together, one swung a leg onto the lower bar, the other copied him, and from most tables the rail looked solid. A narrow maintenance lip outside fooled the eye, some guests thought they were pretending. Nia set down the tub and called, "Boys, step back," then the gust came. The napkin peeled away into the open blue, both boys lunged and slid through the gap, suddenly they were no longer on the terrace but hanging by small hands from polished metal, 64 stories of air yawning beneath them. Streets became threads, cars like scattered seeds. A hush rippled into screams, chairs scraped, phones rose. No one reached the rail. Nia ran. She cleared a chair, planted one heel on the rail's base, and leaned so far her apron strained. The wind roared, she told them, steady because it had to be, hold on. Don't look down. Her yellow gloves flashed as she stretched, rubber tugged, blue sponge pads biting into her palms. One boy's fingers were already peeling away. She grabbed his wrist. The second's grip slid the same instant, she lunged farther, half a shoe on steel and half on air, and caught him too. The boys dangled, mouths open in raw fear, legs pedaling at nothing. For a held breath the city seemed to hang on her grip. Pull them, someone yelled, another voice argued, wait for security. A third started to pray. Nia didn't look around, she looked forward. She thought of her little brother learning to cross a busy street and of her mother saying, hold tight. Don't let go. She locked her wrists, let the pain climb up her arms instead of through her fingers. I've got you, she told the left twin. You're okay, she told the right, words she meant until her muscles trembled and stopped answering. She braced a hip, edged her weight inward, and lifted an inch, they rose an inch. A waiter stepped and froze. The music stuttered out. Her breathing set the rhythm. Another inch. Their knees bumped the bar. The right twin's shoe slipped, she tightened her hold. Look at me, she said. Big eyes found her face and held there, she smiled because courage spreads, and she pulled again. Hands finally found their way to her back, a dishwasher giving a counter anchor, and with a low groan she hauled the first boy over the rail. He hit stone and curled like a comma, sobbing. She still held the second, arms burning then numbed, digging the sponge texture of her gloves deeper around his wrist. Pivoting her left foot onto the rail, she rose inch by shaky inch until his knees cleared, then collapsed to her knees with him in her lap as the terrace erupted. The twins grabbed her neck, she smelled their shampoo. Some clapped because they didn't know how to be anything else. A woman whispered, "Did you see that?" Someone sprinted for the manager, someone else dialed emergency services with nothing to report but a miracle completed. Nia checked them briskly, tenderly, knees scraped, elbows shaken, eyes huge and alive. "You're safe," she said, mostly to herself. Her gloves trembled, she pulled them off and let them fall, yellow petals on white stone. A path opened through the crowd, shoes pounded. A man's voice cracked with terror. Nia didn't turn, she hadn't asked who anyone was, she had done what needed doing while others watched. Only when the terrace finally breathed did a man break through the stunned guests. His suit was flawless, but his face was stripped naked with fear, pale, frantic eyes. He dropped to his knees and swept the boys into his arms. Elliot. Evan, he choked. The boys clung to him, hiccuping with sobs, their small hands still reaching for Nia even as they buried their faces in his chest. He looked up at her and, for a long second, the terrace's noise faded. "You saved them," he said, voice low and shaking. You pulled them back." Nia stood there, breath ragged, the imprint of their wrists still in her muscles. She nodded once, unsure what to say. She hadn't acted for thanks, she had simply moved. Around them the guests began to speak again, some murmured disbelief, others replayed what they'd witnessed and gestured toward the railing like it was part of some unbelievable story. The father rose, keeping a protective hand on each boy's shoulder. "Do you know who I am?" he asked. Nia shrugged. "Does it matter?" she answered. He gave a short, humorless laugh. "Edward Langford," he said. "These are my sons." His gaze softened. "You've given me back more than I can repay." Security arrived breathless and wide-eyed, questioned Nia briefly, and started to review the building cameras. The manager hovered, torn between admonishing her for breaking service protocol and recognizing that she'd prevented a tragedy that would otherwise have haunted the restaurant forever. Edward's eyes followed Nia as she quietly returned to the table she'd abandoned, gathering dishes like it was nothing unusual. She didn't want the spotlight, she wanted to go back to work, to make rent, to check on her mother and brother. 2 hours later, after the lunch crowd thinned, Edward approached her again with the twins in tow. "They want to say something," he told her. The boys shuffled forward, still in matching vests, hair wind-tousled from the rooftop gusts. "Thank you," they said together, small but certain. Nia crouched to their level and smiled. "You're welcome," she said, then added, "but promise me you'll be careful near edges. No more peeking over." They nodded solemnly. Edward pulled an envelope from his jacket and tried to hand it to her. She frowned. "That's not necessary." "It is," he said firmly. "This isn't payment. It's gratitude and a phone number. If you ever need anything, you call me." She hesitated, then took it. That night a guest's camera footage surfaced online, 2 boys climbing the rail, a red-uniformed waitress lunging forward, the impossible instant when she held both over 60 stories of empty air. The video spread like wildfire with the caption, "Hero Waitress Saves Twins from Fall." Comments poured in praising her bravery, some called for medals, others declared that angels walk among us. Reporters phoned the Asteria within a day asking for interviews. Nia declined them all. She didn't want the attention. She wanted to return to work and to life. But Edward Langford had other plans. A week later he arrived unannounced, dressed casually this time, the twins beside him. He waited until Nia was on break and asked her to join them at a corner table. "I've been thinking about that day," he began. "I've been thinking about how in a room full of people, including me, you were the only one who moved." Nia shook her head. "Anyone would have," she said. He shook his head gently. "They didn't. You did." If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more emotional, dramatic, and unexpected tales, and let us know in the comments where in the world you're watching from. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and keep watching.